Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Juneteenth. This is Cincinnati's first Juneteenth flag raising. However, you know, Juneteenth has been celebrated in Cincinnati for 33 years thanks to Lydia Morgan and her husband, Noel. Noel is here somewhere. So this was really the idea of city council member Greg Landsman, who is in a meeting inside. There's a planning commission meeting, and he's trying to, he's hoping it's going to hurry and end, but he's going to try to join us. But I just want to make sure you know this was really something that he did with Assistant City Manager Cheryl Long. Where's Cheryl? So, and Cheryl's going to speak a little bit later, so we appreciate them pulling it all together. I also want to recognize some of our other speakers, Reverend Lynch III, who's here somewhere. I know he's here. Okay, you all can see everybody. Okay, so Reverend Lynch III is here. Freedom Center President Woody Keon was one of the first to arrive. He's here. NAACP Vice President Joe Mallory is probably here, but he's definitely speaking. Okay, I would also like to recognize Cincinnati Council Member P.G. Sittenfeld. Cincinnati Council Member David Mann. Clerk of Courts Aftab Purable. Also, Reverend Casey Smith is here. Now, did I miss any elected official or candidates? Or oh, the mayor's here. Hi, Mayor. Mayor Jack Cranley. And I see lots of other people from the city. So you guys all wave. I see Kelly up there, and Ben, everybody. Okay, all right. So I know there's some folks here from the Bengals. Katie Blackburn said she was coming. She's one of the owners. I know star running back Travion Williams is here. So they're out there somewhere. I also want to give a special thank you to our staffs who really pulled all this together. In my office, Anthony Johnson and Janiyah Miller, and in Greg Landsman's office, Jenny Diaz and Umira Savani. So let's give them a hand, because they're really the ones that do all the work. I want to give a special shout out to Karamia Diaz. Karamia, where are you? Karamia Diaz, because she's been talking about having an event like this for several years, and so she's here to see her idea come to fruition. So I know all of you know what Juneteenth is, but just in case, everybody knows that African Americans and lots of people across the country are celebrating freedom today. This is a day, it was June 19th, 1865, when Union General Gordon Granger got to Galveston, Texas, and announced that 2.5 years ago, President Abraham Lincoln had signed the Emancipation Proclamation ending slavery. They got the new state. There are a lot of reasons for this. Some say a messenger had come earlier but had been murdered. Others say the slaveholders knew about it, just didn't want the slaves to know. But at any rate, it was June 19th, 1865, and Lydia can tell you the story about how she was in Texas and learned about Juneteenth and realized, wow, people are celebrating freedom all over the country, and we're not doing it in Cincinnati. So it's a great story. So I'm looking up at the sun. I know our ancestors are smiling down on us. We have to remember those who were snatched from their families and thrown to the bottom of the ships, chained together and naked, side by side for months and months during that middle passage from the shores of West Africa to the shores of this country. It's unclear how many died. The United Nations said 17 million black people died during the middle passage. I've heard up to 150 million. Folks weren't keeping count, but we know a lot of people died during that middle passage. We also remember the more than 60 million black people who died during enslavement. And we remember our ancestors who survived hundreds of years of slavery and then black codes and Jim Crow. And they survived so that we could taste freedom. We have fought and gained some freedoms, but make no mistake about it, we are not free. We are not free as long as there are racial disparities in healthcare, economic opportunity, education, and housing. We are not free as long as Trayvon Martin can't buy a pack of Skittles and an Arizona tea and walk home without being killed. We are not free as long as 12-year-old Tamir Rice can't play in the park with a toy gun without being killed. We are not free as long as Breonna Taylor can't just sleep in her bed without being free, without being killed. We are not free as long as George Floyd has a knee on his neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. We are not free as long as Rayshard Brooks can't be offered a ride home after pulling over, coming from a birthday celebration and realized he probably wasn't fit to drive, so he pulled over. Seemed like the right thing to do. Why not offer him a ride home? We are not free as long as multitudes of transgender people are violently killed every year. And today we remember UC student Ryan Milton, who was killed about a week ago. We are not free as long as black people are being lynched. And yes, black people are still being lynched. Today we remember Malcolm Harsh and Robert Fuller, who were hung from trees a few days ago. But because our ancestors survived for us, we must survive. And we must continue to make strides towards freedom for those born today and those yet unborn. We can't get tired. We can't sit down. And we can never forget those on whose shoulders we stand. And so today, we remember. I would like for Deborah Jackson to please come forward. We're already standing, so I don't have to ask you to stand. And we're going to join her in singing Lift Every Voice and Sing. Deborah Jackson.
Thank you. Good morning. Good morning. We are the answers to our forefathers' prayer. We are here because somebody prayed for us. We are here because this is an appointed and anointed time. Please join me. Let the walls ring as we sing, Lift Every Voice and Sing. Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring. Ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of a new day begun. Let us march on till victory is won.
Thank you, Deborah. That was beautiful. Okay, so now we are going to have some remarks. And let me call first the president and CEO, the new, kind of new. Oh, and Greg Lansman is here. Hey, Greg. We've been talking about you. Do you want to make some remarks or wait till the end? Okay, all right. All right, so let's call up the president and CEO of the Freedom Center, Woody Keon.
morning, and thank you all for being here. I wanted to thank Councilmember Lemon Kearney, Assistant Manager Long, and Ms. Morgan for organizing this event and for inviting me to represent the National Underground Railroad Freedom Center. I also want to acknowledge Chris Miller for his years-long effort to ensure that Juneteenth become a day of recognition. And of course, I'm honored to be here alongside Reverend Lynch and Mr. Mallory on this important occasion. Today is a day of celebration, but it's also a day of determination. It's the commemoration of the legal end of chattel slavery and the rebirth of blacks in America. It's a new era in the journey for freedom. This flag, like Juneteenth, is an affirmation that we are, and of right ought to be, free, but it's not equitable. And it's a reminder that we still have a long way to go as blacks in America to really enjoy true freedom. The Freedom Center is built on three core principles: courage, cooperation, and perseverance. They're the principles that empowered those seeking freedom through the Underground Railroad. They're also the same principles that helped blacks endure the violence of the post-war South and the era of Jim Crow. They're the principles that guided the Civil Rights Movement. On a personal level, they are the principles that were demonstrated by the Little Rock Nine that enabled me to stand before you here today in this capacity. And very importantly, they are the same principles that we see now in the Black Lives Matter movement. We at the Freedom Center have partnered with the Charles Wright Museum of African American History, the historic Mitchellville Freedom Park, the Northwest African American Museum, Black Archives Historic Lyric Theater, and the National Civil Rights Museum to virtually commemorate the 155th anniversary of Juneteenth and to launch today blkfreedom.org. This website will explore the meaning and relevance of freedom, justice, and democracy in Black American life from a historical and contemporary framework. And we're looking forward to the education and dialogue that comes from this partnership. As we raise this flag today, I ask you to reaffirm your commitment to democracy, justice, and inclusive freedom, and to do so with courage. I ask you to cooperate with each other, as it will take all of us to move our nation towards inclusive freedom. And I ask you to persevere, as we have for over 400 years in this country, in the face of hatred, ignorance, and violence. On this day, on Juneteenth, let us press forward boldly and vigilantly towards our goal of inclusive freedom. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Keon. I also want to mention that Councilmember Jeff Pastor is here. I think Iris Rowley is here somewhere. Iris, I know she said she was coming. Okay, Iris is here. Okay, so next I would like to introduce Cincinnati's #1 freedom fighter, Reverend Damon Lynch III.
All right, good morning. So let's give Jan Michelle an applause for showing grace under pressure last night at the budget meeting. You are to be commended, you and the other members of council. So again, my name is Damon Lynch III. I am the proud pastor of the New Prospect Baptist Church. And in 1865, 2 orders were given by generals. One order, the one we celebrate today, set African former slaves free for the last 155 years. The other order was given by General Sherman, and I passed out today about 100 copies of it. You have it. And those of you who have it, turn to the back of the second page. The recension of that order set African Americans back 155 years. One order set us free for the last 155 years. The other, the recension of it, set us back 155 years. The order of General Sherman was the order for reparations. 20 African Americans got together and crafted a document because they understood we would not be free without reparations. The document outlined here, if you look on the back of the first page, we're going to start in the second paragraph. So today we commonly use the phrase 40 acres and a mule, but few of us have read the order itself. 3 of its parts are relevant here. Section 1, this is actually in the order, this was law. Section 1 bears repeating in full. The islands from Charleston south, the abandoned rice fields along the rivers for 30 miles back from the sea, and the country bordering the St. Johns River, Florida, are reserved and set apart for the settlement of the Negroes, now made free by the acts of law and the proclamation of the President of the United States. Section 2 specifies that these new communities, moreover, would be governed entirely by black people themselves on the islands and in the settlements hereafter to be established. No white person whatever, unless military officers and soldiers detailed for duty, will be permitted to reside, and the sole and exclusive management of affairs will be left to the freed people themselves. By laws of war and orders of the President of the United States, the Negro is free and must be dealt with as such. Finally, Section 3 specifies the allocation of land. Each family should have a plot of not more than 40 acres of tillable ground. Who better to till the ground than those who just got done tilling it for 244 years? When it borders on some water channel with not more than 800 feet waterfront, and in the possession of which the land, the military authorities will afford them protection, hear this, until such as time as they can protect themselves or until Congress shall regulate the title. This was reparations. Our foreparents understood there is no freedom without reparations. This was law. People got land. Abraham Lincoln went to a theater, sat in a seat. John Wilkes Booth came and put a bullet in his head. The next president was Andrew Johnson. Andrew Johnson was the first president ever to be impeached. Andrew Johnson rescinded Special Order 15. And the land and the power that we were supposed to have coming out of slavery, we no longer got. Not only did those who got land, it was taken from them, and reparations was then given to the slaveholders for what they lost. We are still not free until we get reparations. So I want you to read this document. Our ancestors were smart.
Yes.
They understood. You can have the proclamation. You can have Juneteenth. But without reparations, we're still not free.
That's right.
Thank you, Reverend Lynch. I'd like to bring up next Assistant City Manager Cheryl Long. And Cheryl, our City Manager, Assistant City Manager makes so much happen here. So everybody welcome Cheryl Long.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
All right. This is a beautiful morning, and as Councilmember Kearney said, I do believe that the sun is shining on us because this is something that is definitely needed and well deserved. Today we gather to commemorate an important day in our country's history, Juneteenth. But we are also here to mark and recognize a first for Cincinnati. Let's give a hand for that. A first. The relatively simple act of raising the flag above City Hall for the first time is such a major symbol for our city and our country. It's particularly fitting that it's occurring in the midst of current events taking place all around us. Historically, Juneteenth commemorates the monumental struggles of those enslaved and their descendants. But today, June 19, 2020, we stand here, unified, to celebrate African American history and culture, and hopefully a future and progress and growth for Cincinnati. The flying of the Juneteenth flag is a recognition of our history, the sometimes troubling history our country has endured. But it also serves as a sign of the progress we are making as a society. This flag is a reminder of what we have gone through.
Yes.
What we have to overcome. And where we can go if we do it together. Can we say this? Together. Together. I am not a big public speaker, you all. So forgive me. But as I think about it, I stand here not only as a city official, but I too am an African-American mother, African-American wife, and African-American woman. I just want to say I am so proud to stand here today with all of you as we celebrate what should have never been taken away, the freedoms of African Americans. And I am thrilled to see the flag flying high above my place of work, City Hall.
I also want to mention that Renee Mahaffey Harris, president of Center Dakota Health Campus here. And also, next to Mayor Cranley is Dina Cranley. Well, she was, okay, she had to go, but she was here. She doesn't like to be called First Lady, but she is our First Lady, so we're really proud that she's here. Proud of all the work she's doing with healthcare. So next, I would like to, Councilmember Greg Landsman, who made all this happen, is here. And so he's going to come and introduce Lydia Morgan and do the proclamation.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Before I introduce Lydia, you've heard from speakers about what this moment means for the city, but also how far we still have to go. I want to echo some of that before I introduce Lydia, that the abolition of slavery did not abolish, in many ways, slavery in the United States. And what we've seen over the last couple of weeks is a reminder that manifested with the iteration of slavery just evolved, right? It evolved after slavery, and it became segregation and Jim Crow, and today mass incarceration and the over-arresting of people, particularly people of color. And so the fight goes on, and I think it's important for us to know that this symbolizes many things. It symbolizes the moment of abolition, of the abolishment of slavery, but it also symbolizes the fact that we've never flown this flag before. Ever. There's a reason for that. And we're flying it now because things are changing. The policy has to change with that flag going up. The second thing I want to say before I introduce Lydia is that there are a lot of people who helped put this together. There are city staff in our office, particularly Jenny Diaz, staff in Ms. Kearney's office, particularly Anthony Johnson, who many of you got emails from. A lot of people have put a lot of work into this in terms of raising this flag, so please give them a round of applause. And then let me say the following about Lydia, which to me is at the heart of what we have to keep in mind and keep front and center in the, okay. Can y'all hear us? Oh, in the back, all right. Well, this is the part that I think matters most. Lydia and her husband and others started Juneteenth here in the city of Cincinnati in 1988, more than 30 years ago. Yeah, that's a round of applause. She had no money. There was no money for marketing. There was no money for outreach. And on the first year, 2,000 people showed up. 2,000 people showed up. Now, 30 years later, she's here raising this flag. Okay, 30 years later. What I love most about people beyond compassion and integrity and hard work is perseverance. The stick-to-itness, King said. The people who just don't give up. Lydia Morgan is somebody who just doesn't give up. That's why we're here today, is because she doesn't give up. In honor of her, the work that's been done leading up to this moment, and hopefully, the big sea change that we're witnessing and the big policy change that will follow, let it be proclaimed. Whereas the American enslavement of Africans subjected millions to the force of slavery for more than 400 years, I would add, and continues to this day. Whereas in efforts to create a more perfect union, Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation January 1, 1863, providing that all persons held as slaves within the state or a designated part of the state shall be henceforward and free forever. Let me just pause for a minute. There is another part of that amendment, isn't there? There's a loophole in that amendment. It only applies to those who haven't been arrested or criminalized. So the fight to make the 13th Amendment real for every single person is a fight that continues today. Whereas the Emancipation Proclamation made the permanent abolition of slavery a Union war objective and provided the legal framework for the liberation of nearly 4 million enslaved persons as Union armies advanced further south. Again, I would remind you that there was a loophole that we have not yet closed. Whereas, while the Emancipation Proclamation declared freedom for enslaved enforcement of the order dependent on Union Army presence and control, which many slaveholders evaded by fleeing to Texas. And whereas consequentially, an estimated 250,000 enslaved people were living in Texas on June 19, 1865, when Major General Gordon Granger arrived in Galveston to officially proclaim by the end of both the end of the Civil War and slavery, more than 2 years after the initial Emancipation Proclamation. And here we are, decades, a century and a half later, and we still have so much work to do. Whereas now known as Juneteenth, June 19th, is annually recognized to commemorate freedom and represents the continuing fight for equality and equity for Black Americans. And whereas citizens of this city have gathered today to celebrate Juneteenth since 1988, in large part because of Lydia Morgan and her husband and so many others. So now be proclaimed on behalf of the Mayor John Cranley and those of us on council and this city administration that this is Juneteenth Day in the city of Cincinnati. We're going to raise that flag, and it's because in part of Lydia Morgan.
To make remarks, but I'm only going to make a few because I have hit that 70 mark, and I know all of us don't want to be standing here in this heat much longer. Anyway, this has been something near and dear to my heart. Of course, I didn't grow up celebrating Juneteenth. I didn't know anything about Juneteenth. I wondered why we celebrated our freedom from Great Britain, but we didn't celebrate our freedom from the United States. And my mother, when I would ask her that, she would just look at me and shake her head like, you know, it is what it is. But at any rate, back in 1986, I was lucky enough to go with my husband on a trip to Phoenix, Arizona, and I found out people were celebrating our freedom. And I went to my first Juneteenth there, and it was marvelous. It was tiny. There were probably about as many people as there are here at that Juneteenth Festival. But it was like a family reunion. It was like everybody was loving on everybody, just like we're doing right now. And when I came back and talked to my friends, we decided it was something that we had to have here in Cincinnati. And I'll tell you, my husband and I have been working on this festival for 33 years, and many of the first people who worked on that first committee are very much still involved with working on Juneteenth. We've got new people, but Juneteenth was very, very important. And the other thing I'd like to say, we have a group of Friends of Juneteenth. And those are people who want to see Juneteenth happen bad enough that they donate money every year. And that really means a lot to myself and to my husband with the kind of work that he does. Because I just say, would you get this done? Could you get this for me? Would you type this up? Could you send this off? And he's there to get it done. But we just so appreciate so much all of the help that we've had over the years. Connie Harris over there, she's looking like, why is she calling my name? But Connie was my connection with the library, and she would always know, who should I call to get this done? Connie had the answer, so I've always been very appreciative of her. And I cannot not mention Karamia, because though we all talked about it in our meetings about getting Juneteenth done, Karamia kick-started us and got us moving on this path to get this flag raising done. You know, it's amazing. It's amazing that we have a country being run by a person who has no idea anything about our government or anything about our people. But he stumbled into something, and it became something very good for Juneteenth. He stumbled into planning, his people stumbled into planning to have a rally for him on the 19th. And then it was blown and blown and blown. And I can say, though I won't say his name. No, don't say his name. But at any rate, I will say he has done a lot with his own lack of common sense to make Juneteenth what it is right now today, and to have this flag flying, and to have people calling saying, what can we do to help, what can we do to help businesses, whatever. And we have never, ever had that kind of response, and I hope it is not short-lived. I hope that it continues year after year, because the one thing I truly, truly believe, Juneteenth is not a black holiday. It is an American holiday. All Americans need to celebrate our history. It is our history. We all need to celebrate it. And you parents and past teachers and all of you who have parented, we need to get behind our schools, because they're not teaching our children this history. And they need to know this history. All of them need to know this history. I'm thankful to Greg, wherever he is, and Michelle, right here, and my husband and my family and all my friends who just make Juneteenth happen every year. They're there, they're putting up booths, they're handing out papers, they're doing whatever I need them to do, and I really, really appreciate that. And I do appreciate the fact that all of you are here this morning, because this is a very important event for Cincinnati. This will be the first time that this flag has flown, and I have to say I'm just as much at fault as anybody else is, because I didn't even know you could do that. You know, I didn't even know you could come down here and say, I want you to fly my flag. So at any rate, it's done, and hopefully we'll be able to do it a long time. Forever. Forever. So, thank you. Oh, and one other thing. Some of you have gotten some flyers, and the flyers talk about the Juneteenth videos that will be shown starting tonight on access channels, and the channels are on the back of the paper. But also there's really another coup that we have. Channel 19 has agreed to play both films on Sunday, one at 11 o'clock and the other one at 1 o'clock. So be sure and watch, and make your Juneteenth celebration meals. If you don't know what should go in them, go to the website, go to the Juneteenth website, and we've got a list of foods that you can include in your Juneteenth celebration meal. Thank you. Excuse me, and the other thing I need to tell you is when this is over, Asia, where is she? Asia Harris will be, that's your cousin, Asia Harris will be leading us over to, not walking, in cars, leading us over to Marion Way, over that way, to lay out flowers in honor of all of our ancestors who died trying to get to freedom. Since the Ohio River does represent a big piece of that flight to freedom. So thank you, Asia, and we... All right. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Lydia. Asia, raise your hand so people can see where you are. There she is. She's a powerhouse. Okay, I was remiss, I didn't mention the president of the National Action Network Cincinnati chapter, Bishop Bobby Hilton, who also is chief of staff for Hamilton County Commissioner Stephanie Dumas. And also Eddie Cohen, who's president of the Urban League and really responsible for this Black Lives Matter mural, which will be unveiled at 2 o'clock today. So we hope after you go and lay the flowers by the river, get something cold to drink, get some lunch, come on back and be here at 2 o'clock. Eddie, thank you for doing that. Okay, so right before we raise the flag, we have to bring our last speaker, and he's so dynamic. I told him he's got to speak last, and he is the first vice president of the Cincinnati NAACP, Joe Mallory.
It's hot out here. I'm gonna try to keep it brief. Okay. So I want to thank Council Member Jan Michelle Kearney and Council Member Greg Landsman for making this a possibility, a reality. And I want to thank Ms. Lydia Morgan for carrying this torch all these years, keeping the memories alive and the celebration of Juneteenth. I talked to her the other day and she told me that she wanted to pass the batons to some young folks. So get around Ms. Lydia Morgan, let her teach you what you need to do so you can be part of this celebration, which we consider the Black Independence Day. As we know the speech that Frederick Douglass gave, right? What to the slave is the 4th of July. And Juneteenth is our Independence Day. So, I just want to say a couple words. And because it's Juneteenth, this isn't Black history, this is American history. Because America's original sin of slavery is woven into the fabric of this country. And is buried in its soil. And even after the Emancipation Proclamation, it took 2.5 years. 2.5 years for the enslaved in Galveston, Texas to be liberated. I believe it should be a national holiday. Maybe we can start with the city of Cincinnati, get the state, and then make it a federal holiday. So I believe it should be a national holiday. And by doing that, we'll be all acknowledging the history and taking a step towards reconciliation. Because after 400 years of oppression and depression, we stand in the shadow of and on the shoulders of our ancestors. And we are continuing to fight for justice, equality, and accountability even now. As we passionately articulate things like health disparities and underlying conditions. The underlying condition that we face as African Americans is being Black in America. That's an underlying condition that we have no control of. But that's being Black in America. Juneteenth, as our National Independence Day, should never be forgotten because it's a painful reminder of just how much further we have to go. And if you look at Bethel, Ohio, that just recently happened, somebody may not know about it, but in Bethel, Ohio, there was a peaceful protest for justice, accountability, and for Black Lives Matter. The people in Bethel took offense to people gathering peacefully, trying to protest, to raise awareness of injustices that are taking place in this country over and over and over again. And we had police who were present that observed some of the assaults that took place and did nothing. They did nothing. But thank goodness for the video camera, because many of those perpetrators have been identified, and hopefully they'll be prosecuted. So I say, with the events in this country, that we all must reflect and take inventory of our conscience and realize that America has exceeded its tipping point, and we're at a boiling point for change. So may we all truly work together to take meaningful actions that result in authentic, transformative change. No more window dressing rhetoric. We need results. Because words without deeds is like watering without seeds. The current structures that perpetuate the status quo just isn't good enough anymore. So we need to stay at the table and insist and demand on change and get to work. Our ancestors fought to try to stay alive, to pass this torch to us. All the sacrifices they made, let's not throw those sacrifices away and stand on their sacrifices and all their hard work. They understood how important it was to have their voices heard and to be involved in a process that didn't respect them, but they still fought. Right now in America, we have a right to vote. And I want to encourage everybody, if you don't know if you're registered, you don't know what your status is, check it today. Check it today. Because democracy is not a spectator sport. Voting is a verb. It takes action. Tell your friends and neighbors how important it is. If you want change, we have to insist on change and make change. Once we elect these elected officials, that's not the end of the process. That's only one tool in the toolbox. We have to hold them accountable. They are there as our voice. We elected them. We are all tax-paying citizens. We must demand accountability. We must change policy. We must create policy. And sometimes we must change policymakers. Thank you for this time.
Thank you, Joe Mallory. Also, I want to mention that the division head for the Office of Human Relations, Paul Booth, is here. Paul, wave. Okay, so now it is time for the flag raising, and I think Greg Landsman and Lydia Morgan are going to, are you going to go? Okay, so as the flag goes up, I want us to just remember our ancestors. Let's think about freedom and how we can move toward freedom, all the things that are going on in the world today, all the change we've got to make, and we've got to make it together. And I would like to bring Lisa Craig up to sing as we watch the flag. So everybody turn toward the flag. Lisa, come on up. Lisa is going to sing as we watch the flag raise.
I think as we go to raise the flag, do the cameras, you all need to move. Do you all want to move? I've been told that folks want to move. So we'll give you a second to move over. And then folks, if you want to reposition yourself, this is actually a good position for you, but if you want to move, we just wanted to give people an opportunity to move. Thank you. Hey, thank you all for being here too, by the way. God bless you. Thank you.
All right, in just a minute, we're going to hear Lisa Craig. We'll let everybody kind of settle in. Lisa Craig, yeah, I said Lisa Craig. So that's fine. Are you okay? And I should mention that Lisa is the executive director of Gabriel's Place on Reading Road in Avondale. So she's out there feeding our families and doing lots of great work. So Lisa, thank you so much.
Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom over me. be a slave. I'll be buried in my grave and go home to my Lord and be free. Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom over me. And before I be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave and go home to my Lord and be free. No more weeping, no more weeping over me. And before I'll be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave and go home to my Lord and be free. They'll be singing, oh, they'll be singing. They'll be singing over me. And before I'll be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave and go home to my Lord and be free. Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom over me. And before I'll be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave and go home to my Lord and be free. And before I'll be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave and go home to my Lord and be free. So I ain't gonna let nobody turn me around, turn me around, turn me around. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around. I'm gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, marching on to freedom land. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around, turn me around, turn me around. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around. I'm gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, marching on to freedom land. Ain't gonna let injustice turn me around, turn me around, turn me around. Ain't gonna let injustice turn me around. I'm gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, marching on to freedom land. Ain't gonna let racism turn me around, turn me around, turn me around. Ain't gonna let land.